Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Kemp-Graham, and we have progressed to our second week in this course. This week's assignment will be you writing your introduction for your chapter 1 and posting it by Wednesday in your writing circle. And you, as well as your peers, will read each other's introductions and provide feedback, constructive feedback. Things that they did good, things that they could have done better. Um, Also including questions if you're not clear about something, and you're not being rude if you are not clear about something. And so much so often we know the area so well, so when we write about it, sometimes we don't write it in a way that is easily read for persons who are not in that field. So be gentle, be constructive, and provide feedback so that your peers could hopefully accept the recommendations and revise their chapter 1, and they'll be submitting, everyone will be submitting chapter 1 to me on Saturday. So I thought I'll go back and pull my dissertation and just talk a little bit about my introduction, um, and how I got to writing this introduction. Well, I wanted to research schools, poor schools in Newark, New Jersey, that had similar demographics. Students pretty much, had the same level of poverty, uh, pretty much the same number of students in the building, and the schools were in the same kind of bad part of town. I wanted to know why one school was a blue ribbon school and the other school was failing miserably, um, with the same exact resources, so per pupil expenditure. So each school that I studied, each student, there was an allocation of about $18,000. So I really wanted to know, why is it that this school, could do so well with the same kids who, experiencing the same difficulties, and this school on the other side it can't do anything. So I had to think about that and how I could convey that um, to the reader in the beginning. How do I introduce this? I kind of know all the facts and all the insights, but how do I begin to make this something that's going to be interesting to anyone beyond myself? So I want to go to my introduction. Honestly, I don't remember what I wrote. I told you before, after writing it and you're so happy you have it in a nice pretty book, you put it on your shelf. So I'm going to go to my introduction. What in the world did I say? These table of contents and tables. I know many of you are saying, have indicated, oh my gosh, how do I start? How long does it have to be? Um, how do I know if I'm writing the right thing? You'll know. Okay, chapter 1. So we can see here in chapter 1 that I provide an introduction, and I talk about just kind of the financial background of the school district and the whole state, and how a lot of schools were struggling. There was a big court case, and the state courts told certain school districts, listen, you have 3 years to adopt a whole school reform model and implement it, because kids aren't learning. And at that point, that was the new silver bullet. Everybody adopting a different whole school reform model. And so what I then did say, okay, that's kind of interesting, but who really is going to care about my little district, which wasn't little, but who wants to care only about Newark? How does this pertain to other people? So then what I had to do was to provide data, interesting data, that school performance didn't just vary In Newark, it varied across the whole state. So each school district, has some, high performing and low performing um, schools. So I shared that information, um, in my introduction to say, listen, this is going on across the state. It's going on here, in this town, and I would like to study it and really focusing on the disparities in academic achievement. So that's how I introduced my study. What I have found to be the most effective is that when you open up your introduction, that you start with some hardcore facts, because that gets people, like, it makes them alert. If the numbers are such that it's alarming, or it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that these many children X, Y, and Z, that will be the hook to get your reader. Facts, numbers. And then you move on. And when I went to the statement of the problem, I pretty much said what I said earlier. Given that the schools had the same resources and had to implement the same exact reform model, why did one school do well and so the other school did so poorly? So I wanted to share that um, with you, um, in terms of, like, okay, how do you begin to draft or craft in your mind your problem statement, your introduction. So you start off, what is it that you're trying to say? What is it that you want to research? And kind of tell me very, very, very quickly, why should I care? And I think that's what it really comes down to. You care, but why should the rest of the research field care? What makes your study worthwhile engaging in, and more importantly, in reading? So you want to get as much catchy information that you can to have that great opening. You know, this is why I have to do this study. In the last 40 years, this epidemic has been occurring. And there's only been 5 studies, that have addressed this issue. So this study is important because X, Y, and Z, and that there is a void in the research. Um, or, there's been tons and tons of researchers and research articles that have been um, performed on a particular topic, but they have not looked at this issue from a different angle. So even though, and I know some of you saying there's a lot of research already out there, the most important thing is that the research that currently exists will not look like the research that you want to do in terms of what you're trying to find out. Um, there aren't a whole lot of answers, or a whole lot of how-to steps. The first thing that I could tell you that you have to do is really, really begin to immerse yourself in the literature. And so what that means, I still have my file cabinets where I was just pulling articles. The same way you went in to get the dissertations, you can go in and get journals. You have access to so many journals, which is awesome, and start seeing what people are saying about your topic. There are also organizations, national, worldwide organizations, that post their research online. So I would suggest going and doing a Google Scholar search. But the best way that you can feel the most confident um, and knowledgeable would be to begin to pull articles. I have articles, I wouldn't even want to show you my den, that are all over the place for 10, 12 different subjects. But as I come across them, I pull them. You have to have a system in place. File them away. I put mine in binders so that when I get back to that topic, those articles are there. Later on in the course, I will share with you the bibliographic software that I use, which keeps all of my references organized, because I hate, having to do the APA reference in the back in the system. This program does it for you fabulously. So I'll talk to you about that at another time. But right now, I would like for you just to focus on just the introduction. How are you introducing this work? Because it's going to be really important. And in writing what you plan to do, that's also going to be important in terms of your sell to the chair. Because if a student asks me to be his or her chair, well, what are you working on and why? Because if it's not interesting, I'm not interested. If you as a student can't articulate, or tell me what it is that you're trying, or you're looking for, or you want to find, I wouldn't be on that committee. Okay, so you have to be able to articulate, just if nothing more, this is where I think the issue is, and this is um, the problem I want to try to solve or address, and this is maybe how I'm thinking about doing it in terms of research design. That's fine. But you have to begin to, and you might have a broad, super, super, super broad topic, and that's fine. And then you have to begin to start narrowing it down. Now after you'll see that you would not be able to solve or research that topic that you have chosen unless you planned on staying in school 10 years, and you got to get out. By that time you should already be doctor. So I'm going to end this little clipped little short video. I don't know, it's about 12 o'clock. I've been up all day, crazy day, but I didn't want to go to sleep before I posted this because I know some of you are very, very anxious to get writing. And this week, week 2, all the way to week 7, we're writing and we're writing and we're writing. I will not inundate you with articles to read. As much as I can provide quick samples of what's expected, I will. But now that you know how to pull dissertations, now that you know that pretty much all the dissertations have the same chapters, same areas, start looking at other dissertations and how they started their their chapter 1. It's nothing wrong with that. Looking at someone else's style, saying, okay, you know what, I would like, that was really interesting. I would like to start my introduction off like that. It's not stealing. Just get the idea. It might have been a cool way to open it up. Some people use quotes or some other things, but you want something that at the sentence very first sentence, you have got the reader hooked. That's going to be really important. Well, with that being said, I'm going to bid you a good night. And I'm so excited, I guess too excited, to read your chapter ones. So I know I tried to set this system up such that you circle members just, speak among yourselves, but it's hard for me to stay away. If I read something, I want to be able to add to it. So I will try to be less intrusive, I guess, but I really enjoy reading your posts and your comments. Have a wonderful weekend. Good night.